Hi, my name is Eugene, and welcome to this part of this conference. Really happy to be here. This topic we would like to discuss is less technical. Definitely, that's a topic more about soft skills, about career development. But I think it's really useful because quite often, in case of really hardcore developers, DevOps engineers, site reliability engineers, at some point you found some place, some time when you really need to move further and develop other skills as well. So let's talk about that. Quickly about me. My name is Eugene, as mentioned already. I'm a lead DevOps engineer here at Luxoft. I'm in the company for about 5 years, and one reason I decided to make this presentation actually is that I'm actually in the same position. I have this challenge, I have this problem which I want to decide to solve and prepare some framework for that, and I would like to share it with you. So what would we talk about today? So first I will tell why is it personal, why it's my story, what problems I had, and what kind of solutions I propose to do. And obviously, of course, in addition to those different options, every person is different, so I try to make it as general as possible. There are many ways, so it's not only about me, it's my problem, but I try to find all ways which could help me to move further. And of course, I would like to discuss how your company could help, what can they do for you, because it's obviously valuable for both sides, for you in person and for company you work for. So let me tell my story. Why is it personal? So I'm in IT for like about 20-ish years. My first salary was like 2003, related to IT, of course. So I used to work in many environments. So I started like a regular network engineer, office system administrator, supporting simple cases, networking, internet, maybe some routers and networking. And later I moved more to the system administrator area. You know, each person could tell a different story how they go to DevOps, right? Some had some development background, some are maybe like QA engineers, some are site reliability engineers. So my story is about system administrator in the beginning, right? And during my career, I was quite lucky because it was quite a rare occasion when I have had to find a job, right? So usually somebody came to me telling, because it's a community, right? So they know me, they said, look, we have an interesting case, we have an interesting position, and usually a job came to me instead of vice versa. But I used to work in many companies. So from, let's say, small startups, when we have like one table and you see CTO here, CEO here, and at night you migrate some infrastructure from one cloud to another, from one country to another, to huge enterprises with hundreds and thousands of people. And I think it's really valuable because both, let's say, sides, they have different benefits and they have different disadvantages as well. So that's why it would be great to understand your different paths depending on the size of the company. And currently I work in Luxoft for 5 years, even more, and I have changed several projects. I managed a couple of teams in several countries. So currently I'm managing a small team here in Canada, and at some point I understand I'm kind of stuck in my career, right? So what does it mean? Well, I'm a leader, right? So I'm a manager, I have some engineering tasks, I have some management tasks, more responsibility. But what next, right? So I'm about 5 years for about the same position, same level, and I'm quite an ambitious guy, right? So I want to learn, I want to grow, and at some point you understand that the chair you are sitting in is too small for you, right? There could be different reasons for that, but in my case, I understand like I need to grow, I need to move further. I already, not maybe, you cannot know everything, right? But it's kind of became routine, boring, and so on. So that's the reason I decided to start research and find ways what to do next. Previously, it was quite obvious. If you're like junior engineer or if you're just brand new in the IT world, you like intern in some company, in some project, it's quite obvious. You just grow your skills, technical skills, you learn new tools, toolkits, and technologies, right? If you learn one cloud nice, you can go further, go deeper, or you can learn another cloud, or you decided to go from like infrastructure to DevOps to platform ops. You have a bunch of tools. And you just learn technologies, tools, and like just evolutionary, you just became junior, regular, senior, and so on. Right, so that's pretty much straightforward. But when you are at the lead position, there is no simple next step, right? Because you're already a manager. And next level, like your managers, they could be totally not technical. You will be lucky if they have some technical background, but quite often, project managers, program managers, it's a totally different world, right? So they do not exactly require have some technical skills and grow from like IT, right? And that's a problem because if I see who I am now, right, and I'm planning to grow further and see my next steps. So what do I see? Not much options. Yeah, so that's my problem. So that's what I wanted to discuss today. And as you can see here, it's told, is it a problem after all? Yes, obviously, for some, that would be totally fine. And I know many examples. For example, network engineers. It's totally clear career path when you, for example, got some Cisco certificates, CCNA, etc. And you just go deeper and deeper. And the more certificates you have, the more demanded you will be, right? And at some level, companies will fight for you, right? And you will remain technical the whole career, and that's totally fine, and that's totally okay, and I respect that definitely. Personally, I just feel I'm not really so like narrow in terms of skills, so definitely it's not possible to grow at the same, go deeper. So you could have one tool, one technology, and know it really well, or you can know a lot. So I prefer like know a lot of stuff on maybe not so deep level, more like on high level, architecture level, and propose some solutions, not like just knowing how to use one exact tool. It's also quite better for job safety, right? Because tools appear and appear. Do you remember Docker Swarm? Do you use it? I don't use it because obviously Kubernetes became a standard, but they appear and disappear, and that's why you should be flexible. And I think that's the advantage I have because I have big background in many areas, and that's my case, right? So if you're a developer, for example, or even DevOps engineer, so you've probably seen that roadmaps. So there's a special site for that when you can just open that, I don't know, put it on the table or on your wall and say, okay, I know Go, I know C# or something like that, I know Terraform, and you know next step, right? So when you're trying to go deeper into this tree, there are different ways. But obviously, the big question is how relevant those roadmaps are. For example, here in the DevOps roadmap, Go is like a must. Go language, which sounds quite strange to me. But yeah, anyway, in general, it's a good direction to check if you just started your journey. That makes sense. Same appears to many other areas, to Java developers, to Python, to C, to many of them. The problem here is that they do not work for leadership positions, right? So in my case, well, obviously I'm interested in growing and learning the technologies, but before just starting blindly checking those check marks and learning something without realizing, oh, maybe we won't use that for a couple of years because we have quite conservative company, right? Or vice versa, we work in the company which use some legacy, which is pretty cool, but it's not really widely used. But it would be great to learn that from engineering perspective, right? That's one aspect. Second one is that you spend some time already on some leadership activities, You have one-to-ones with your subordinates. You have different planning sessions, maybe budgeting even. So that's why it doesn't work well for leadership positions, right? And at some point, these graphs, these roadmaps looks like a role-playing game, right? It's like lots of different paths, different tools. You can learn one, you can spend time to learn some technologies, and at some point, closer to final boss, you realized, oh, I made some mistake, and it wasn't exactly what really helpful, right? Yeah, all those pipelines remind me of those graphs. So that's the problem. That's the case I met, and quite often when some new fancy technology appears, it's really interesting to try it if you have time, obviously. But at some point, it just appeared that it's not actively used and not required on the market, and everybody just wants something really conservative and so on. So that's why I decided to think what to do next, right? Because there is no simple way. Even like dozen of ways, we need to understand what to do. So I want to repeat that there is no silver bullet here, of course, right? We have a problem, but each person is individual, right? We have different people, different desires, different aspirations. And of course, you cannot just simply say like, okay, it worked for me, just follow the steps, follow the step pipeline, and you will be rich. I don't know, and happy. That doesn't work. So I wanted to go like a level higher, right, and understand what exactly to do in such a case. Because as mentioned already, in some cases it's not even required to do anything. You could be happy totally on engineering position. And in many, even big enterprises, where at some point of the career path, you just have like one-to-one with manager. And for instance, as I know at Microsoft, where I used to work, they just ask you, okay, so would you like to move further in engineering roles? It will be interesting. It will be competitive salary and compensation. It will be new technologies. It will be great teams. And at the same time, you can decide to go to management. It's a bit different path, right? And one of the biases here I had personally, because in my childhood, everybody was, okay, you can be an engineer, or my condolences. Because those days it was not possible to grow far and have proper salary and compensation by end of career being an engineer. Now it's a different world, right? So it's not necessary to be a manager, and both sides are totally equally respected, and that's, I think that's great. That's why we have so many good engineers right now. So let's talk about that. Step one, which I wanted to cover today, before even starting, first of all, we need to think what exactly we would like to develop, right? So there are two major points here. It's hard skills and soft skills. So let me explain that a bit. If you're not aware, hard skills usually it's more like engineering skills, like for example, programming languages, knowing technologies, knowing networking, right? And that's one way, right? So that's quite obvious to me. And usually, like, because I have a technical education, I have a technical background, it was always my way, right? So like when in the 90s, my parents asked me to program VCR, and when I hacked some BIOS passwords those days, yeah, that was my way, right? But there is one other thing which usually kind of became in shade from the hard skills, at least in my case, right? Your case could be totally opposite. But in my case, nobody told me about those, right? And soft skills just at some point came, and were like many trainings, and some of them like for soft skills. I'm like, why do I need them, right? I want to work with data. I want to work with infrastructure, servers, hardware. What soft skills do I need to speak to server? Not much, right? That's why I wasn't really wise there those times, because obviously there are different levels. First of all, when you can work with technologies, it doesn't matter if it's a tractor, if it's I don't know, train, or if it's a bare metal server. That's one way. That like I would say it's kind of first level. Another one is to work with data, right? You could be a brilliant engineer and you could create an interesting solution, but if you cannot collect data, make some report, and represent that, we would probably remain at some point at this position I had when I stuck and could not create visibility for my work, right? And that's also important. And next level is working with people. They are less logical. They have our opinions. They're different, right? And I'm not speaking those levels are like one is higher than another, right? They're totally different ways. And for some people, it's easier to work with other people, and like technologies for them is like rocket science, and it could be vice versa, right? And that's why that's all the ways we need to consider, right? It really depends on the person. I was really an introvert, like in school and so on, and I was never thinking about like public speeches and something like I'm doing today, right? But those skills, they could be developed even if you like hardcore coder. There is definitely a way to develop them as well. And what's most important, you can mix those, right? So let's imagine you are at the lead position, and next steps could be several different roles. So you could be a lead architect, right? That would include almost all the time you will spend for architecture, about engineering, and so on. But you still have some time you will need to spend for soft skills, for like one-to-ones with subordinates, someone like that. You could be a principal consultant. That's a different proportion. You could spend like 70, maybe 80% of time for engineering for engineering tasks, and all hour would be about meetings, about discussions, and so on. And you could be a tech lead. You could have half and half, 50-50. That's definitely another role, right? So that's an advantage, because there is no way anybody saying to you like, look, you need to choose 100 this or 100 no this, right? So it's all in between, of course, and that's great. That gives us an opportunity to choose something in the middle, right? So in general, the let's say line going from more technical, from hard skills to more soft skills would look like technologies, going to consulting, went to engagement management, different kind of pre-sales, leadership, which would be even more managerial, and even like sales and so on, because it's really valuable in sales if you have technical background. So you can choose which way to go and which proportion would like to go to have. And scientifically, actually, there was a survey, and I mentioned already, quite often your managers are not technical at all, but there is definitely a sign that if you or your manager and so on is able to do the subordinates tasks, the trustworship between you is on a definitely high level. So if a subordinate knows that your manager knows what you are doing and probably could do it better, that's definitely a different level of relationships. So another step, another, I would say, gap here is evaluation. So before making any changes, before going to your manager, before everything, I think it's really important that usually that part is really missing, is to evaluate your current state, right? Because previously I was thinking, okay, so I'm kind of on one place for a year or two or three, I need to go to my manager asking for salary increase, right? Just because I'm in place for 3 years, like that, right? That's not fair, and that's wrong, I think, right? So before that, you need to understand where are you. Some kind of self-reflection, right? So you need to understand from this picture. Let's imagine you're a plant, like a beautiful flower, definitely not a veggie, and you need to understand where are you. If you just started the position, if you have lots of like fields for opportunities to grow, to understand new technologies, to have knowledge transfers and so on, that's first case, I think, right? You have opportunities, you're even maybe a bit scared because lots of new technologies, new stuff. That's one case. Another, when you just fit the role and you're planning to how to develop further, right? So yeah, good fit, you feel comfortable, job is interesting, tasks are interesting, and but you still need to think about next steps anyway, right? And like in my case, when you're overgrown, right? That's the dangerous part, because you could have burnouts because you got bored and because of routine. Better not to go this far, right? When you're already meeting the pot walls. And it doesn't matter in which state you are. In all of them, you need to think about next steps, because even if you just started a new position, if you're a junior and new company, you need to think about future, right? It's terrible question on interviews like, how do you see yourself in 5 years? But it's definitely worth asking. I mean, to yourself, right? Maybe not answering yet, but at least asking, right? Because if you are going to some conservative company, when you see people like average age again near is really high, and people just sitting in the same role for decades, maybe that's not the best opportunity for you. Maybe to learn, yes, but not to stay for a while, right? So that's the evaluation part. It's really important, and you need to spend some time thinking about that, I believe. To me, it was the biggest mistake I made in the past, that I did not consider that, right? And one part of the evaluation, of course, is to understand what kind of company do you have, right? First of all, there could be different types of company depending on the type. I mean, is it product company, is it consulting company, or maybe it's not even IT company, right? That's fine. Many companies need DevOps now, and that's totally okay. And why is it important? Because depending on the type of the company and your personal specifics, right? All those nuances, you need to understand which works for you better, right? There is no right answer and no wrong answer. It's just different. Also, of course, size of the company matters, right? If it's startup, you have more flexibility, more tools to learn, less bureaucracy. That's great, right? But at some point, in terms of growth, it could be really questionable, right? I had such situation, and if it's successful startup, in luckiest way, you'll get acquired by bigger company at some point, and when you start meeting all the same issues with enterprises, right? Or if it's not successful, well, probably your skills won't be relevant anymore in 5 or 10 years. And yeah, obviously we're talking about mid-sized companies. It's like about 10 to 500 employees. Obviously, that's not like strict boundaries, right? But that's kind of middle earth, I would say, which is kind of optimal, actually. That's not only my position, because it has all the benefits of startups. You have less bureaucracy, you have some flexibility, but it's still not like large enterprise when you don't know people who are sitting next to you and so on. It's kind of middle ground, yeah. Important thing to add here is that we are talking about size of independent unit, right? So it could be a big company like Luxoft, right? So it has like more than 10,000 of employees, but independent unit could be quite compact, and it's important, right? So yeah, that's one more thing to consider. Step 2, we're talking about solutions. So as I mentioned already, first is to ask yourself, right? So you need to understand what you would like to do, what's comfortable for you, right? So there should be like nice balance between comfortable and enjoyment, and not comfortable, of course, right? So you need to understand, maybe that's okay to do this. It's really it's fine. It brings some money, but maybe not so fun, right? Or you can make funny things and cool stuff without big compensation as well, right? So you need to find this balance. Experiment, that's really important. So of course it depends on the employer, of course, but it's really important to have some area to spend some time to experiment, to try other job duties, right? Another domain. Good example, for example, if you're a Java developer and you have some background in financial area, it's just statistically you get a higher salary, right? In between different domains, it's really valuable. You can try different domain. It could be even like machine learning, AI, data science, and so on. Different speciality as well. It's also the same. You can add not engineering skills to your portfolio, right? That's really valuable, right? And all the best specialists, all the best salaries are in the team of different areas, because it's quite rare to find such specialists, right? And you need to try. The problem is you do not know. For example, I do not know will I be a good project manager, right? Or like something related to finance, because I have some knowledge, but I never tried in real life, right? It's like trying an experiment for your pet project, and when you need to go to enterprise for production for like thousands of users, that's a different story. So it's great when you have some flexibility and time to experiment and try something new, right? And of course, important to also spend some time for development in soft skills area, right? It even doesn't matter if you're like hardcore engineer or not. Those soft skills, the biggest benefits of them is that they are useful everywhere, not only at work, right? So it's just useful. In family, with friends, it works. That's interesting part. So what simple task you can take to start working on that, right? Even if you're like really hard introvert, you can try interviewing. That's really valuable, especially on leadership positions. I personally really love to do that, just because it also improves your skills to not to conduct, but also to pass different interviews. That's unfortunately totally different skills from technical skills, and sometimes great technician could fail the interview just because of lack of that skills. For visibility, very good to have some different conferences, meetups. It should be like something big, international, something like that. But even small knowledge sharing, some demos in front of your team, that's super useful. I still remember like many years ago, nobody knew about DevOps at all. And I came to the team and said, look, why don't you use those like methodology? And they said, we never heard about that. And I just spent like a couple of hours making some demo, preparing some even really simple slides, maybe even without them. More about conversation, about discussion. It improves you. It improves relations in a team. It's really useful. So really recommend that. Some project management activities. Also, if you found it interesting, participate in some hiring, participate in some plannings. It's great because at some point you just could be partially involved without any responsibility, right? So you just will see how it works on different levels, right? If you like hiring to your team, that's one case. But you want to understand what other steps before, what's happening on previous stages, how it works. You can go and, for example, came to recruiters and look, CVs I'm receiving, they're usually mismatched. So how can we improve that, and so on? That's also a good area. And business, of course. At some point, my parents told me like, yeah, engineering is fine, of course, but you need to go to the bank, right? You need to earn money and so on. So that's a great area, and at least to me personally, it's really interesting. So if you can participate in consulting and business, in pre-sales, that could be really, really technical questions. So RFP means request for purpose. And when some company came to you asking for some, to solve some problem, and project managers, they could say, yeah, we have these competences, we have such experience. Some may be cases with different our clients, but you could say, come here and say, okay, that's great, but you can try this technology. We have skills for that. We have engineers. That would be way easier than you are proposing, right? So that's technical conversation as well. So it's really, really, really nice. Yeah. But you need to have a good suit for that, unfortunately. Mentorship, yeah, that's really important as well. So if you have new joiners, if you have growing team, quite often new people, they just get lost and worry to ask anyone. That's like the simplest case to improve your soft skills, to start working with new joiners, help them with like different routine, even tasks like getting accesses in the start. And that's really useful and valuable from both sides, of course. When you come to a new place, it's great to have some mentor who will ask your questions, because every company is different, right? And last but not least, of course, languages. If you know 2 languages, that's great. If you're able to speak a couple of more, that gives you extra. definitely. That's really valuable, especially in our growing world and multi-continent, multi-country companies, right? And also active flexibility, of course, in terms of relocation. That's what actually helped me a lot, because I used to live in different countries, able to learn local languages, and I really enjoyed that. So now let's speak about opposite way, right? So that was your vision. How do you estimate your place? What you would like to grow? But there should be some intention from the company as well, because if you're like stuck in some position like conservative company, they usually like promote people just because they're sitting in the same place for 10 years. So in good companies, and I'm happy I'm working in one of them, there should be some framework and some intention for company to help people grow, not getting bored, and prevent burnout. So you need to understand before going further and change point of view. Take a look how company sees you, right? So if you have heard of, even played game Sims, you probably remember you can have really good career just if you go to the work in a good mood, right? If you had enough sleep, if you have enough energy, if you had well breakfast, and when you're fresh at work, it's really visible on the employer side, right? So managers usually take promotion decisions based on different roadmaps and criteria. It depends on the company, but in general, what's definitely important is your current performance. Obviously, it's kind of strange if you go to your manager saying, "Oh, I want bigger salary because I just want more money," but when your performance is not perfect, right? Doesn't fair enough, right? So you need to understand it should be justified, right? Obviously, company interested in your motivation. Are you aspired, right? Are you able to learn? Should company invest this money to you to keep you and to grow, to give you more positions, go on higher levels? If you're not interested to learn and you just want to be a manager because it's a good title in your LinkedIn profile, right? Your intellectual capability, of course, not everybody was born to be a manager or born to be an engineer, right? Some people just can't work with other people efficiently. That's totally fine. We are different. That's fine. So that's what you need to understand. You need to understand the company's perspective, right? You need to understand what company is interested to, why everything is about money right now, right? So you need to understand it's not about only personal relations with your manager, right? So manager, if he's a good one, so they should understand what value can you bring to the company, right? And in the end, probably earn more money, right? And of course, important part is readiness to develop in the long term. So one thing is like you learned some new tool or passed some courses for project management, you went there, but we need to think about long term as well, right? So if you're in a good company, you have long-term goals, you have long-term perspectives, you can see that people who are working in the same position for several years, they're in a different place now, different position maybe, or with different salary. That's important as well, right? So keep in mind that nobody wants you to just make you promoted, give you a high salary just to satisfy and to keep you, right? Sometimes, of course, it's an emergency when you got another proposal and you actually don't want to move, you just want a bigger salary. Yeah, right. But that's kind of red flag to me as a manager. If somebody came to me saying, "Look, I have got a proposal from different company, but this is kind of blackmailing," I'm not sure this person would work in year and 2 or 3, right? So that's kind of a risk for company. So you need to understand it from both sides, right? So obviously companies want you to grow, but with some nuances, right? So that's mostly it I wanted to discuss today. And before I will finish, I would like to pay some respects. Of course, my direct manager, Konstantin, is the delivery director for BCM here at Luxoft. We are working quite intensively with him. We have created an individual development plan for me. We have meetings. Despite of his really high position, he spent some time with me and discuss options, discuss my involvement. areas for experiment. I really appreciate his help. I really glad he helps me and understand my demands, and we work together as partners in business, right? So he want to invest in me, I want to invest in the company, and to grow together. And also I want to ask, I want to thank Alan Williamson. He is a vice president of Ops Guru here in Toronto. We have several calls, and it was really useful for some useful tips and advices. That's an example of the company with really developed development plan for career, different workflows, different mixed roles, and so on. So his feedback was really useful as well. So yeah, thank you, and thanks for watching, and have a good day then.